Hey, Pretty Girl Club. I want to talk about women who use marriage as a mask. Have you ever been around a woman like that? A woman that uses her marriage or her long term relationship as a way to mask her own insecurities? Happily married women, they're not obsessed with what single women are doing. Happily married women, they don't get mad at single, pretty, privileged women who decenter men. So, have you ever wondered why someone who has the man that she wants, why she would be so upset that you, as a single woman, think you're pretty? It's because she's not actually happy in her relationship. So I talked about the psychology of a femcel. So this is going to be a part of that series. So I know that the term femcel, that's not the perfect term. But there are actually a lot of women in long-term relationships, and they are either emotionally dissatisfied or sexually dissatisfied. So the reason some of these women hate pretty privileged women, and the reason that some of these women don't like when you decenter men, it's because they don't like your social power. That's really what it is. She felt powerless outside of her relationship. And so that's why she has to define herself based on her relationship status. It's because once she leaves that marriage, she is a loser. She goes back to being invisible in society. A lot of women get into relationships not because they truly love that man or they truly wanted him. They get into relationships because they wanted to feel chosen. So that's why you see a lot of women making fun of you saying, oh, well, you couldn't keep a man. I got picked and you didn't. Well, she's revealing her psychology. She's revealing that for her, relationships are about being picked. She wants to feel chosen because in real life, she doesn't feel chosen. She doesn't feel chosen as a beauty standard. She doesn't feel chosen in her career. She doesn't feel chosen or visible in any other arena. And so a lot of women who are codependent, that's really what that is. She's codependent, so she can't leave that man because she knows that if she leaves him, no other man would want her. She has a scarcity mindset when it comes to men and relationships. And so these are the women who hold on to their dusty men. They hold on to these 50-50 relationships, and they're living in a tolerable level of permanent unhappiness. So they get mad when you decenter men. They get mad when you have pretty privilege and you're single because you represent freedom to them. You possess a level of freedom and social power and social status that they don't have. This is also why you see a lot of pick me women saying, I don't care about your career. Your career doesn't matter. Your degrees don't matter. They're saying that because they themselves don't have education. I've never seen a highly educated, successful woman speak down on getting an education. It's always the women who lack the education. It's always the women who don't have the career. It's always the women who are not living their passions. They're not living their dreams. They didn't start their business. So those are the main ones who try to convince you that your credentials don't matter. And so that's actually a form of projection. She feels like she does not matter. She can't live her own life based on her own intelligence. She doesn't have the intelligence to be able to acquire the credentials to start her business. She doesn't have the social climbing skills to be able to live her dreams. And so that's why she tries to project that onto you. And have you ever noticed that whenever it comes to pretty, confident, powerful women who are not male centered, the main talking point that you hear is, oh, you're decentering men because you couldn't choose better. And it's like, no, actually, she couldn't choose better. And so that's why she chose to stay with the mediocre man that she's with to this day. It's because she had no other choices. She didn't have options. She didn't have the option to decenter men because she cannot access the soft life in any other way. The only way that she can access a softer life is through a man. So the man has power over her. The man actually has social power in her life. She doesn't have her own social power. So she has to ride the coattails of a mediocre man and be codependent on him because she doesn't know how to navigate life as an individual. So she lacks a sense of independence. So let's talk about this. Why do women use marriage as a mask? And why would a woman who claims to be happily married be so angry at pretty women, single women, or women who decenter men? Well, number one, it's because her husband is ugly. He is unattractive. He's sexually unattractive. his face card is declining. Maybe he's got a beer belly. He's got messed up teeth. His jawline's messed up. Maybe his skin is bad. Hair has gone gray. He's got a bald circle in the middle of his head. Maybe he's got a horrible dad bod or something. So a lot of women who have settled for these extremely unattractive men or men that they're not sexually attracted to, they get mad when they see a woman taking control over her sexuality. Have you ever noticed this? A lot of women who are with these unattractive men, they get super pissed off at pretty privileged women because they know that a pretty privileged woman has the option to go and be with an attractive man if she wants to. So a lot of women who are in these marriages, they're in these unhappy marriages, part of it is because their husbands are unattractive. So you know how they talk about women hitting the wall? A lot of these women's husbands have hit the wall. They've hit the wall financially. They've hit the wall in terms of their aesthetic. And so there are a whole bunch of women who are in these sexually unsatisfying long-term relationships and marriages. And so that's why they get so ticked off when they see a pretty privileged woman. She's sexy, she's single. They get mad because they feel like she is living the life that I wish I always had. That's her mindset. It's like she gets to have that freedom. She gets to go out and date an attractive man. Because think about it, when you get married, obviously you're never going to be dating again. You can only date your husband. You're just going to be dating him. So if you marry a man who has hit the wall in terms of his looks, and you try to convince yourself every morning that, oh, I'm attracted to him, everything's not about looks. Have you ever noticed this too? A lot of unattractive women or women who have settled for extremely unattractive men, these are the main ones who want to argue up and down and say, well, everything's not about looks anyway. And it's like, we never said everything is about looks. We're just saying that looks matter to us. And so they're upset because you had the option to look good, and you also have the option, if you wanted to attract a man who is actually attractive. So have you ever noticed that the main women who come online and say, oh, all these women are jealous because I'm being loved well? Usually when you look at their videos or when you see their spouses, their spouse is not anybody that you would be jealous of. Like, remember how I made that video a few months ago about the woman that was saying that light-skinned women are jealous because she's married and being loved well, and, they're jealous of her husband. And then I pulled up a picture of her husband. This man literally looked like he was in his mid-60s or 70s. He literally reminded me of Santa Claus. And she had the audacity. She was using it as a coping mechanism. That's what a lot of unhappily married women do. Because they're not fulfilled in their marriage, they resort to using their marriage as a coping mechanism for their own insecurities. And so they will say things like, well, at least I have a man. You couldn't even get a man. You couldn't even keep a man. I'm being loved well. Notice how her flex. She didn't say, I'm married to an attractive man who's fine as hell, and I love to show him off. I'm proud to call him my husband. I'm proud to be his wife. No, it's never that type of energy. It's always women who they're anonymous content creators. They don't show their husband. They never actually bring their husband on the screen. And this is why no matter how much shit people talk about Shira 7, I will always support Shira 7 because whether or not I follow her talking points, at least she had the boldness to come on and, number one, actually help people. Number two, she actually brought James onto the live stream. So she was willing to open herself up. She stood 10 toes down on who she chose. But notice how the main women who try to make fun of women for being single, or they make fun of women for decentering men, these are women who brag so much about their marriages, but then they never actually come on and talk about their marriage. They never have the man come on and show his face and have that man say, yes, I am protecting and providing for my wife. They can never show you this ethereal, magical husband that they brag so much about. The main women who are like, my man, my man, my man, those women, they never come on and show you who this magical man is. A lot of married women are actually very attention starved. So remember how I talked about incel men, and how they're attention starved. So what they'll do is they'll go online, they will create all of this rage. They'll try to rage bait women. And they're doing that because that's their only way to get attention. So that's what you see with women who create content against pretty privileged women. They create content against decentering men. They're hoping to rage bait and they want us to become emotionally dysregulated. And for a lot of women who are in these unhappy marriages, they have loneliness and abandonment triggers. So they're not getting attention elsewhere. The only place that they get attention is from their husbands. They can't go out. They're not like the pretty privileged single women, especially women who decenter men. They're not going out every weekend, going out all the time, hanging out with their friends and going to festivals and wearing their cute little sexy outfits and going on all these vacations 24/7. No, they don't have the same lifestyle as a woman who is single and puts herself first. Because when you're married, the whole concept of marriage is that you put the other person first, and hopefully they put you first as well. But with these women who are in these 50-50 relationships, and it's never really 50-50, usually it's the woman investing more. So when you're around these women who are in these unhappy long-term relationships, you are actually triggering their abandonment wound, because a lot of those women had to abandon themselves in order to stay in that relationship. She had to abandon her pretty privileged journey. She had to abandon her career. She had to abandon putting herself first. So that's why she gets mad when you put yourself first. Because she feels like, how dare you choose a different lifestyle than me and actually succeed? Remember how I said some people get mad when you don't want to be like them? They literally get offended. If you don't want to look like them, if you don't want to have a husband that looks like theirs, if you don't want to have a relationship like theirs, they get offended. So you're emotionally triggering them just by existing. And that's why I said that this is not really about just men. This is about women who are jealous of your happiness. They're jealous of your freedom. They're upset because you have a multifaceted personality. You have a multifaceted lifestyle. Pretty privileged women, especially women who are also decentered from men, like in the exotical space, we have multiple sources of validation. So we already get like male validation, so we don't have to jump into an entire 50-50 long-term relationship just to get male attention. And if you want to know more about that, please check out my video where I talk about the difference between pretty privilege versus smegdualization. But a lot of married women, especially in these 50-50 relationships or these relationships where they're living in poverty, marriages where they're not wealthy, which, remember, about 90% of men make less than $100,000 per year. So whatever married woman wants to shame you for not being married, there is a 90% chance that her spouse makes less than 100K. So you've got these women in these average at best marriages. They're living a middle class to sometimes even lower middle class lifestyle, and married women on average don't have the same social freedoms that a pretty privileged woman would have. And they definitely don't have the same freedom as somebody who has decentered men. So these are the women, a woman who's decentered men, these women, they really can do whatever they want because they're not performing for the male gaze. They're not performing so they can be chosen by a man. A lot of the behavior that you see in marriages is actually performative. So that's why oftentimes married women, they don't go out as much, obviously, because that looks bad. If you're a married woman, you're going out to bars and clubs and going on vacations without your spouse. So there's a lot of boundaries that have to be put in place when you're in a marriage. And single women don't have any of those same boundaries. Single women can truly do whatever they want. And they don't have to answer to anyone. If you're in a healthy marriage, anybody who's in a healthy marriage, they discuss things with their spouse before they do it. So they discuss their decisions with their spouse. But single women, we don't have to discuss anything with anybody. We're not sharing finances with anyone. And that's another thing too. Number two reason that some women use their marriage as a mask is because they couldn't choose better. So they settled for whoever chose them. Beggars can't be choosers. So women with a pick-me mindset, these are the women who beg for the breadcrumbs of a man's attention. They will settle for 50-50. And another reason some of them don't like pretty privileged women is because you are the same type of woman that her husband is fantasizing about. You're the same type of woman that her husband would be following on Instagram. You're the same type of woman that her husband is jacking off to at night. You're the same type of woman that her husband compares her to. A lot of men are extremely emotionally intelligent. Let's just be honest, like statistically speaking, a lot of men do tend to be less emotionally intelligent, because of how they are socialized. And so we all know that in long-term relationships, a lot of men will actually use triangulation tactics. A lot of men will have the one that got away, and of course, it's never their wife. So you, as a pretty privileged woman who has decentered men, you represent the one who got away. The pretty privileged decentered women, we are the ones who got away. We didn't settle for the dusty marriages. We didn't settle for men who don't treat us well. So these angry women who try to pretend like they're happily married, but then they go into a spiral because they see that you left your ex. You left your ex-husband, your ex-boyfriend, you got out of the relationship, and they see that you are thriving outside of a relationship. Well, that's actually, that harms her self-image, because you're exposing the fact that she actually could have chosen better. She could have chosen herself. And that's the difference between being male-centered versus being de-centered. Male-centered women are always focusing on choosing better, choosing a better man. And de-centering men is focused on choosing yourself, choosing your boundaries, your career, your type of beauty that you want to have, your type of lifestyle that you want to have. So women who are codependent, they can't imagine having high self-esteem without a man. They can't imagine having a fulfilling life without a man, because a man is the end all be all to them. And so that's why oftentimes they will never bring their husband on a live stream. They will never bring their spouse. They will never interview their husband and ask him, hey, are you paying all the bills? They'll never do that, because they know that as soon as they bring their marriage into the forefront, they know that other women actually wouldn't be jealous of them. So a lot of unhappily married women, they use their marriage as a mask, because they're hoping that you feel insecure about being single. They hope that you have the same pick-me mentality that they have. And let's think about this logically for a second. Have you ever seen a happily married woman in a healthy relationship making fun of single women or worried about how pretty another woman is? A happily married woman. Have you ever seen a happily married woman obsessing over how pretty another woman is or is not? Have you ever seen a happily married woman obsessing over how beautiful a single, decentered woman is? Have you ever seen that? Because I haven't. Usually happily married women are actually enjoying their marriages. They're focused on their spouse. They're enjoying time with their spouse. Have you ever seen a happily married woman stay up all night and create live streams at 2 a.m., investigating the beauty and investigating the lifestyle and the background of a pretty privileged woman who has decentered men? Have you ever seen that? Because usually if somebody's married, if I was married and my spouse is sitting in the living room berating someone on YouTube at 2 a.m., yelling and shouting and hurling insults, I would actually be concerned. I would get up and I'd go in there and I'd be like, hey babe, is everything okay? So that's how you know that those types of people, they're not actually happily married, because a happily married woman in a healthy relationship, she's not even going to be emotionally dysregulated like that. She would not be staying up all night long so she can make live streams and then delete the live streams. She's talking crap about single women. She's talking crap about decentered women. She's pinpointing exceptionally beautiful women who are literal Instagram models. The types of women that hate Instagram models. Have you ever seen a happily married woman who is fixated on a beautiful Instagram model, and then she wants to try to stalk that woman or figure out like how pretty is she really? Have you ever seen that? I've never seen that. The only type of behavior that I've seen is jealous women who do that. They're using their marriage as a way to mask their insecurities. So they're deeply jealous of the desirability that an Instagram model has. They're deeply jealous of the freedom that decentered women have. They're deeply jealous of the financial status that a lot of educated women have. They're jealous of the women who actually chose themselves. And that leads me to number 4. They have nothing else going for them in life. No education or career, an unsuccessful or struggling business, etc. So, of course, she needs a man because she has no other options in life. She has no other pathways to success. Her being in a relationship, she's in survival mode, basically. So her last resort to survive and to have food and shelter is to live with this man, or it's to go 50-50, or it's to do 70-30, whatever it is, she's definitely paying bills. She's paying bills. She is not living a trad wife lifestyle. Like, if you look at content creators like Blunt Girly, she has spoken against hypergamy, sugar baby, trad wives, casual sex. So the only other option that's left is 50-50 or hypogamous marriages. Those are the only types of relationships that she has not directly thrown shade against. That's the only type of relationship where she has not called it out as being incorrect. If you look at her videos, she actually mentioned in one of her videos that if she were to not have money, then her bills would be covered. So that's an if. That's an if-then statement. So that means that she does have money, she does make money and has a job, YouTube basically, and she is contributing to the household financially. So she's paying. So it's a 50-50 type of relationship. She's paying bills, maybe she's the light bill woman. Doesn't matter how many bills, she's paying bills. So that's why you see content creators speaking against the women who get spoiled or the women who spoil themselves. They've decentered men, so they choose to spoil themselves. We choose to go to the spa by ourselves, or we go with our girlfriends. But another thing too is that women who use marriage as a mask, they're suffering in silence. So you as the pretty woman, you're the one that her husband fantasizes about. You're the one that he jacks off to. You're the one that he cheats with or wants to cheat with. So let's talk about cheating as well, because being cheated on in a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship, that's nowhere near experiencing cheating or abuse in a marriage, because when you're married, you're living with the person, your finances are intertwined with them. And then let's assume that you're married and that you guys are not poor. Let's assume that you are middle class or even upper middle class. So that means that you most likely had a huge wedding with all of your friends and family, and you most likely paid thousands of dollars to celebrate your marriage, and you had everybody there. That means you're the type of person where you most likely posted your ring on Facebook, or you posted, all of your marriage information online. You flaunted it. If you were truly happy, you would have been the type of woman that would have flaunted it, because you're excited to be with that person. You're proud to call that man your husband. So that's why you see women posting online like, oh my God, I'm so happy, my man, my man, my man. And so a lot of these women who end up using their marriage as a mask, they can't leave. They feel like they cannot leave that marriage because it's too much of a humiliation for them. Their self-esteem and their self-image cannot withstand the potential humiliation of being made fun of for going through a breakup. I don't view it as an insult. Going through a breakup, that doesn't say anything about my personal self-esteem or self-image. I still have value as a woman outside of a relationship. So people saying things like, oh, well, you guys are just single and that's what you get. You couldn't keep a man. That's not an insult to me, because having a man is not a flex. Being married is not a flex. I don't have hierarchy thinking. But women who use marriage as a mask, they have hierarchy thinking. They place marriage at the very top. And then a step below that is being engaged. Below that is boyfriend, girlfriend. Then below that, you've got, single or baby mamas, side chicks. A lot of women, especially in the Black community, have the trauma of being from broken homes. And so their goal is to try to create a nuclear family for their kids. And that's not bad. It's actually not a bad thing. But I think a lot of them view it as a status symbol to be in a marriage, even if she's a married single mother. It's not so much about her being happy. It's more so about her curating an image of defying a stereotype. Because we all know that a lot of unambiguous Black women, they have lots of traumas that they've been through, according to their own talking points. They've been through things like colorism, texturism, featureism, maybe even classism, if they didn't grow up wealthy. Maybe they went through coming from a broken home themselves. And so for them, seeing a man as a prize, this goes beyond just the man. This is about defying stereotypes for them. So that's why you see a lot of unambiguous Black women with this talking point of my man, my man, my man, and saying that decentering men is radical. It's because for them, having a man, it's a gateway into overcoming negative Black stereotypes. So they view a man as their Lord and Savior. Their whole life is spent trying to gain the approval of racists. Their whole life is spent trying to prove racist people wrong. So they're living life on an entirely different playing field than pretty privileged decentered women, because the difference with us, especially women who decenter men, is that we actually don't care. We don't care so much about what society thinks of us, or like what do other people think if we're not married. We don't care about any of that. We're not trying to fit into this mold of perfection. But what you see from a lot of black women is that some of them will latch on to whatever man they can. Unattractive, dusty, 50-50. Maybe he has baby mama drama. Maybe he has side chicks. Maybe he's over here emotionally abusing her. He's not supporting her. He's making her pay bills. He's not caring for her. He's not emotionally available. You'll see them latching on to men like this because being in a marriage, it represents having access to more of a privileged lifestyle. But we all know over here that obviously that's false. Because being married, that doesn't cancel out poverty. It doesn't cancel out abuse. It doesn't cancel out arguments. We even talked on here about how in a healthy relationship, it's considered healthy to argue only 2 times per week. First of all, the bar is in hell. But it's like, okay, you're telling me that you go through 104 arguments per year with your spouse, and you expect me to believe that this is the pinnacle of health. This is the pinnacle of having a perfect life. Being with someone forever that you argue with and you're not even sexually attracted to, and he is not even faithful or loyal towards you, and he doesn't value you. But a lot of the women, they don't care because they just want the image. They want the American dream. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that concept. I know it's not real, but it's this concept of the American dream. They view white people as their standard of living. So they feel like, okay, a lot of white American people are in 2-parent homes, living in the suburbs with a white picket fence and the dog. So I want to mold my lifestyle based off of what these white people are doing. So I talked about this. I talked about how a lot of times in the black community, they're very male-centered and also very whiteness-centered. So they feel like, okay, what do white people think of me? What do men think of me? Okay, white people and men, they think that I'm just a ratchet future baby mama. So let me live my entire life so I can prove that wrong. So they're jumping through all of these social hoops, even if those marriages they're getting into don't make them happy. They're jumping through hoops because they're trying to prove themselves to the same people that were prejudiced against them. So do you see what kind of mental prison that actually is? They don't have the freedom to be themselves. They don't have the freedom to pursue their careers. They don't have the freedom to decenter men because they have been mentally and emotionally colonized. They've been dominated and subjugated by patriarchy. So they're attempting to benefit off of patriarchy. They're just using a different strategy, which is, I get it. I am living in a patriarchal society myself. So their strategy was marriage. My strategy was pretty privilege or decentering men. So they're just upset that you chose a different strategy and that strategy is working for you. They're mad because your life is actually easier than theirs. That's why you see these women that use marriage as their mask. And let's talk about black marriages for a second. Because a lot of the women who are talking crap about the exotical space, these are unambiguous black women in black marriages or long-term relationships. We already know the stats on black women marrying black men. Unambiguous black women marrying unambiguous black men. We already know the stats on that. You've got 2 traumatized people. So the woman has dealt with colorism, texturism, featureism, classism, lookism. And then now let's take it over to black men. Think about all the things that they have dealt with. They're also dealing with colorism, texturism, featureism, lookism, classism. And then they're dealing with the whole dangerous stereotype, being stereotyped as being unsafe or whatever. They're dealing with people thinking that they are threatened. So you've got 2 people in a relationship who have both gone through PTSD. And if they both haven't worked on healing from that, what kind of marriage do you truly think that's going to be? Do you really think that that is the pinnacle of relationship success? And that's why I say some of the main women who claim to be such experts and giving so much relationship advice, these are anonymous content creators who wouldn't dare show who their spouse is. They wouldn't dare show themselves because they know that they would be exposed as being a fraud. If I was truly afraid of being exposed as a fraud anytime someone makes a video exposing me, then you would have seen me delete my content. I would have pulled a Paris Milan. I would have just got rid of my whole channel. I would have pulled a Chrissy. I would have pulled a Blunt Girly. I would have deleted all of my content that made me feel exposed. No, I have over 1,000 videos still sitting up on my channel to this day. Because no matter what anyone says, my talking points are valid. Decentering men is valid. Being a pretty privileged woman who chooses to be single, that's also valid. And let's talk about this talking point of, oh, she can't keep a man. Why is it always the woman's responsibility to keep the man? Why does nobody ever have smoke for the man who left his family, or the man who abandoned the wife, or the man who was abusing the woman to where she got a divorce from him? Like, why is there always smoke for the woman and there's no smoke for the man? And then what they'll say is, oh, you need to choose better. But then they don't tell that woman who to choose. Choose better. Okay, so give these women standards. If you're such an expert on relationships, why don't you show your husband? Your husband is better, right? You're saying choose better, and you're saying that you chose better, so then show us your husband. Tell us about your husband. Tell us about his background. You can do that anonymously. You don't have to dox yourself in order to do that. You can tell anonymously what your spouse does for a living, how you guys met, how you guys began dating, how did you know that he loved you? Maybe you can ask him like how he knows that you love him. Why don't content creators ever do that? Well, because that would expose them as being a normal human being who has relationship problems. Just because you're married, that doesn't mean that you don't have problems. There's no such thing as a perfect relationship. There's no such thing as perfect human beings. And there's definitely no such thing as a man without flaws. So my question is, what kind of flaws does your husband have? I'm sure that you won't be able to answer that. What kind of flaws does your husband have? These women view keeping a man as a skill. So instead of focusing on education skills or building their businesses, getting careers, no, a lot of these women, they view keeping a man as a skill. Oh, I got to keep his attention. I got to keep him satisfied in the bedroom. I have to keep making his meals. I can't go out with my friends. I have to go home so I can cook dinner. I got to go home and do these chores. I have to go home and take care of the kids. So they view keeping a man as a skill. And it's like, okay, if unambiguous Black women as a whole truly did have a skill of quote unquote keeping a man, wouldn't the Black community not be so broken as is? And I also find it interesting that you've got unambiguous Black women attempting to make fun of Exoticals, saying that, we come from broken homes and we've been abandoned by our Black fathers. Which community and which ethnic group historically has had the most broken homes and fathers who abandoned them? So it's like, anytime somebody says a talking point like that, not only are they showing you that they're male-centered, and also Black male-centered, because they're saying, your Black father left you, so basically you're not valid because you don't have a Black man in your life. You don't have that Black father that stayed with your mother. You couldn't keep, so it's, the talking point is you can't keep a man, and your mom couldn't keep her man. And it's like, okay, so what are you saying about the majority of the unambiguous Black community then? Wouldn't you be dissing your own community? Wouldn't you be dissing your own subscribers by even saying that talking point? And also, let's say that all of us Exoticals came from a bad background. Even if somebody does come from a broken home, or if they do come from the ghetto or something like that, your past does not determine your future. Your past is where you came from. Your future is where you're going. So all it takes is you making a different choice for you to change the course of your life. So I don't view people as like, oh, if you come from this type of background, you're always going to be that way. I think that when it comes to dating, like if it comes to dating and relationships, I can see how somebody would think that way. But I don't think that human beings are a monolith. So it's like, oh, well, she came from the hood, so she can't be my friend. She's not allowed to be a content creator because she came from a broken home. No, I think that that's a very cheap way to try to put someone down because you can't address their talking points. Number 12, emotional dysregulation. Women who use their marriage as a mask. Women who spiral on the internet using talking points such as you can't keep a man. These women are so dysregulated by your beauty. They're so dysregulated by your lifestyle to the point where they literally view you as their enemy. So that's why I say that some people, they're not multicultural. They don't like diversity. just admit that you're not multicultural. When I say that I'm multicultural, I don't just mean in terms of ethnic background. I'm talking about friends that have different political views than me. I have friends that have a different sexual orientation than me. I have friends that are from the hood, friends that are from wealthy backgrounds. So that's all a part of multiculturalism. So anytime I see a content creator getting mad that somebody lives a different lifestyle, anytime I see someone upset that you're participating in another culture, that's how I know that you're not multicultural. Because if you were, then you wouldn't have a problem with the culture of decentering men or the culture of pretty privilege. Just like how, when it comes to YouTuber Blunt Girlet, I didn't have a problem with her cultural background. I didn't care that she was more red pill adjacent and that she was a part of the red pill culture. I didn't care because as long as a person treats me well, it doesn't really matter so much what their background is. As long as they don't push their beliefs onto me, as long as they're not prejudiced against me. And that's another thing. Anytime you are stereotyping someone or making somebody your enemy because they're from a different background, that's actually called prejudice. So prejudice, it doesn't just have to do with your race or your ethnicity. You can be prejudiced against somebody conservative. You can be prejudiced against someone liberal. You can be prejudiced against somebody who decenters men. Women who try to flex their marriages, what they're really doing is they are weaponizing respectability. So what they're really trying to do is they're saying, I am more of a respectable woman than you because a man chose to marry me. He chose to put a ring on it. So I'm more respectable. So what they're really implying is that if you are single, you are not worthy of respect. If you are decentering men, you're not worthy of respect. So do you see the hierarchy thinking there? She's validating her femininity based on her marital status. So it's that argument of I'm more feminine than you because, I did a better job seducing and so I got him to marry me. I am psychologically better than you at dealing with men because I got what I wanted, which is a marriage. And it's like, okay, the women who decenter men, we got what we wanted as well, which is self-esteem, happiness, freedom, options. So if the argument is I'm smarter than you because I got what I wanted, well, then technically we are smart as well because we also got what we wanted. It just happened to be different than what you wanted. I've also noticed that the women who tend to pedestalize marriage the most, usually they do come from impoverished cities or they come from broken homes themselves. And so, kind of like what I said about how they will try to prove that they don't fit a stereotype, it's almost like they are getting married to heal their inner childhood wounds. So I talk about that. I talk about reparenting yourself on this channel. So that's another reason why I don't care if some of the exoticals don't have fathers or if their father abandoned them or something. That doesn't make you less valid as a person. Some people's parents are not alive. Some people are orphans. Some people, they do come from a broken background. That's exactly why I make content on here about remothering yourself and refathering yourself. But the ones who are super male-centered and they view marriage as a prize, oftentimes they're seeking this marriage because they want to try to redo their life. So they didn't have mommy and daddy. So she wants to become mommy and she wants her husband to become daddy because they're hoping to heal their own childhood wounds via a marriage. And I don't recommend that. I don't think that's very smart because, that's codependent. Because now your wounds are only able to be healed if a man chooses you. So you're putting too much power in his hands. And men do the same thing with women as well. They have mommy issues. They try to solve their mommy issues by maybe sleeping with a lot of women or, going after a certain type of woman. You do see this sometimes in interracial relationships where you'll have black women who have issues with their black father. So then they want to marry a man who doesn't remind them of their father. And then you have the same thing with black men who fetishize non-black women as well. They want to marry someone who doesn't remind them of their trauma. They want to marry someone who doesn't remind them of their ghetto black mother. So they're using a relationship to heal their emotional wounds. They're trying to use their relationship status to prove to themselves that, hey, I'm worthy of being chosen. They're using their relationship status to overcome internalized racism. Oh, well, I'm not beneath white women because a white man chose to marry me. Have you ever noticed that talking point? They're actually using that as a way to deal with their racism PTSD. They're using a sexual relationship or a marital relationship with a non-black person to heal their own internalized wounds of feeling rejected for their race. That's what I mean when I say they're using marriage as a mask. They have rejection wounds. They have the wound of never being asked on a date or never being chosen. And so for them, marriage is the number one thing that makes them feel the most chosen. Have you ever noticed a lot of women, their best memory is their wedding day? One of their best memories is their wedding day. Why? Because that's when they feel the most special. That's the only day that they really feel that special. I feel special all the time. So I don't have one particular day that like really stands out. If I were to think of some of my best memories, I would say maybe graduating college, having my parents being there and then saying like, wow, we're so proud of you, kind of achieving something for myself, working hard at something for 4 years and then finally getting to walk across the stage. I guess you could say that's one of my memories. So do you see how if I were to examine, let's psychoanalyze myself. I'll do it to myself right now. So that tells you that a part of my self-esteem is based on my achievements. Because I looked back at a memory of me achieving a goal and then I tied that to my happiness. But for a lot of women who are male-centered, they can only look back at a relationship status. And then that's the only thing that they tie to their happiness. So they don't have achievement-based self-esteem or, maybe self-esteem that's based on emotional regulation. So I talk about decentering men, and some people might be wondering, okay, if I decenter men, what should I center my life around? For me personally, my life is actually centered around my mental and emotional health. So that's why I pride myself on emotional regulation or like the things that I've overcome, not being defined by my past. That's why I pride myself on those things because I center my identity more so around my mental health and wellness. Whatever somebody uses as a flex, that is what they center their identity around. So you know how they say, "Oh, you're revolving your whole personality around your racial background." Okay, it's actually not a bad thing to be proud of where you come from. Only a person who's not proud of where they come from would get mad at you flexing your racial background. There's nothing wrong with being proud of like your African American heritage or your multiracial heritage. So that's why I always say that I don't have a problem with stuff like that because it's nothing that's externally focused. All you're saying is, hey, this is the people group that I come from and I'm proud of that. But then when you have women who they do that with their marriages, they'll be like, this is the marriage that I have and I'm proud of that. Okay, so if you're actually proud of it, then be proud of it. Stand 10 toes down. Bring your spouse onto the live stream, interview him. Or you can at least talk about him, like go into detail without doxing yourself anonymously. Why can't they ever go into detail about who their type is, how they met their type? Well, it's because they would begin exposing that man's flaws. So that's how I know that they're using it as a mask because anytime somebody is doing social masking, what they're really doing is they're trying to hide their flaws. So that's how you can tell who's a genuine content creator and who's not. Genuine content creators, they don't go out of their way to try to hide their flaws. That's why even in the case of Shira 7, people talk shit, but Shira 7, she doesn't care if you guys see her flaws or her relationship flaws or her man's flaws. She doesn't care because she's trying to be more genuine. So that's why I say that I have a little bit of a mistrust for anonymous creators where they brag so much about this ethereal, magical man. They talk so much about how they're so loved, but then they can never give not one detail about who the man is. So it makes me think that they're either lying, the man doesn't exist, they're not actually married, they're not actually living the lifestyle that they claim, or they're just male-centered and they feel like simply being married is the end-all be-all. And when it comes to happiness and status and lifestyle, it's like, sis, who are you trying to convince, me or yourself? Because at that point, that's why I say that they're using it as a mask. They use their marriage as a coping mechanism. Because if all you can do is say, I's married now, if that's the biggest talking point that you have, notice how nobody else has been able to address any of the exotical talking points. they always relegate to something random or personal, like, oh, I'm in a relationship and you're single, so like, I win. And have you also noticed that a lot of male centered women, their insults are always male centered as well? They'll say, oh, well, you're not pretty because you didn't get picked by a man. Well, you're not seductive because you didn't get that man to marry you. You decentered men because men decentered you. Do you see how male centered all of those insults actually are? So she's attempting to use her marriage as social currency. And that's because she feels like being chosen by a man that gives her value. So being a wife, that's a status symbol in her eyes. So women who don't have access to other forms of status, so maybe they don't have status when it comes to their beauty. They don't have status when it comes to their racial background. They don't have status when it comes to their socioeconomic background. And this is according to their own talking points. I don't agree with that, but that's according to their own talking points. Some women who are low status, they will shoot for whatever's easy, which is, getting a man and latching on to him, especially a 50-50. Do you know how much men benefit from 50-50 marriages? So it's like, yeah, of course he's going to want to marry you. You're giving him a 50% discount on bills, access to free sex whenever he wants to. You're acting as his free therapist and emotional support. You're helping him with his social skills. You're teaching him how to socialize with women because he's learning that through you. You know how some men, they'll be like, oh, she taught me how to love. Okay, what he's really saying is she taught me social skills. She taught me how to interact with women. So it's like the amount of value that women bring to marriages in general. Marriage will definitely benefit the man, especially a 50-50 or a hypogamous marriage. By far, that's going to benefit the man. So women who have low status in every other area of their life, they don't have all of the different sources of micro-validation that comes from pretty privilege. And also, let's talk about pretty privilege based on the male gaze. Because if you're a male-centered woman who has male-centered pretty privilege only, when you get married, all of that pretty privilege goes away because obviously you're not really out there anymore because you're married. You're only with your spouse. So you're not really out there kind of enjoying the male gaze as much, or at least I would hope so. If you're faithful to your husband, then I'm assuming that you're not outside kind of enjoying and soaking up the male gaze like how you used to. That's why I say a lot of women who get into these marriages, they actually go through a state of social shock because they spent their lives receiving an abundance of male validation via their pretty privilege. And now they have dedicated their pretty privilege to that one man. So they're no longer, so they have decentered the male gaze outside of their husband. And so for a lot of women, that's not enough validation for them. So that's why you get these women who get extremely pissed off at single, pretty privileged women who have decentered men. They get pissed off at Instagram models and all that. They're pissed off because they're like, that's not fair. You still get to have an abundance of the male gaze and you don't have to invest like how I do. You still get his attention just by posting an IG photo. I had to go through an entire 5-year relationship, engagement, premarital counseling, postmarital counseling, relationship therapy, had to move in with him, had to move out of my city and move to his city because that's where his job is. Marriage requires a lot of sacrifice. So that's what a lot of married women won't tell you. They won't tell you the sacrifices that they've made in order to get into their marriage and in order to stay married to that man. Remember that every privilege has a downside. Every lifestyle has pros and cons. Why is it that women who make this marriage talking point, they can tell you about the pros, but they never tell you about the cons? I have no problem talking about the dark side of pretty privilege. I am honest with you guys about, hey, this is what I've experienced in a positive way, choosing this lifestyle of pretty privilege, and this is what I've experienced that is negative. Why is it that with married women who come against this space, they only tell you about the positives of their marriage? They never tell you about the dark side that comes with these long-term relationships and these marriages. And especially in a black marriage. I mean, you would think that if you are one of the rare few, if you're one of the chosen few black women with a chosen black man who's just this unicorn, let's assume that you're a unicorn black woman with this unicorn black man. You would think that that type of couple would definitely want to come out and like help other people in the black community to like have the same amount of happiness as them, right? So why aren't they coming out and telling you both the good side and also the bad side and the sacrifices? Well, it's because they don't actually have that lifestyle. They don't have the lifestyle that they claim. That's why I say I believe that a lot of these women who are flexing these marriages, they're either not really married or they're not in an actual healthy marriage. They feel trapped in the life that they've chosen for themselves. They don't have the money to leave that man. So that's why they get mad at women who have careers. That's why they throw shade and be like, nobody cares about your career. Nobody cares about your money. Nobody cares about your status. Yeah, they do. And that's also why they have a tendency to call pretty women hoes. Well, it's because deep down inside, they have a desire to actually sleep with a man that they're sexually attracted to because their husband is not sexually attractive to them. Or maybe he let himself go. Their husband hit the wall. So they call pretty women hoes because if they were pretty, they would be a hoe. If they actually were pretty and if they actually had the courage to leave their dusty man, they would be a hoe. So do you see the projection there? Women who use marriage as a mask, they feel unworthy without the marriage. They view other women as competition, especially single women, pretty privileged women, or the women who decenter men. Because think about it, if you're the type of woman who decenters men, you're going to be the type of woman who spends more time doing self-development. Usually these women they're doing their careers, maybe they have more time to invest in their fitness or in their health or doing their passions. So that actually, by default, decentering men, believe it or not, it can actually make you more attractive to men without you trying to. Like, even though you're not trying to attract men, the fact that you're so focused on yourself and so like entrenched in your passions, that actually makes you more attractive. So women who use their marriage as a mask, they're actually threatened by your magnetism. They're threatened and they see you as competition. And these types of women, they fear being seen for who they really are without their marriage. So it's like, who are you outside of your relationship? What defines you? Name your top 5 qualities. Name your top 5 qualities, name your passions, name why you're passionate about those things and what you're doing to make a difference because of those passions. A lot of male-centered women, they can't even articulate who they are outside of a man. A lot of male-centered women don't even have hobbies outside of their man or spending time with him. Like, even when it comes to YouTube, you guys know I'm passionate about content creation. That's one of the things I love. That's why I made over 1,000 videos. But even outside of YouTube, I still have other hobbies. I have other things that I love doing. So women who are male-centered, they do not even have time to do as many hobbies or passions as women who have decentered themselves from men. Because think about it. If you're male-centered, a lot more of your thoughts are being occupied with, how can I attract this man? How can I keep this man? How can I get him to only have eyes for me? How can I do conflict resolution with this man? I have to meet his family now. I have to meet his kids now. Oh, there's baby mama drama. So the entire thought process and the emotional state of a male-centered woman is different. But what do you ladies think? Let me know in the comment section, and I'll talk to you next time. Stay pretty, ladies.